So I've been asking God more and more, like, what does this chosen mean? What does this, because we hear it all over the internet. It seems like it's trendy to be quote unquote chosen. But I know that I am because God Himself has confirmed it to me numerous times. And I've just been questioning it because it's like, well, I'm 40, I've lived 40 years. How am I suddenly all of a sudden chosen and have been for the last few years? Like, what does that mean? And truthfully, you're most likely chosen from birth, and it just basically means, because God's given me more insight on it, He continuously unfolds it to me bit by bit. But I just wanted to put this video up for clarity purposes on it, because we hear the word thrown around a lot. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're doing sin in your life, like any type of sin, anything illegal, anything related to the dark arts, like tarot cards, witchcraft, anything like that, you're not chosen. Okay. Now, perhaps maybe you are, but at this very moment, this current second, you're not. Okay. Because what the chosen ones are is they've been selected by God, where these are usually warriors. These people have been through, like, literally to hell and back, like maybe a couple times over. And they've sat there and been like, why me? Like, I'm not perfect. I've sinned, but I didn't do anything bad enough in my life thus far, whether I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever age, to merit or deserve going to hell and back so many times, to suffer so much loss, to suffer, all this hardship, whatever it may be. And you see people that you would consider more quote unquote wicked than you yourself are, right? Those that are perhaps heavy in sin, maybe they do a lot of crime, things like that. And you're like, why wouldn't you send that person to hell and back? Well, that person, even if they went to hell and back, they're not strong enough. They're too weak. Like, they would die in the face of that addiction. They would die in the face of that adversity. Or they would end up, in some sort of a worse predicament. God, therefore, could not use them, right? It wouldn't be tried and tested in the fire. It's like, picture putting a piece of plastic in a fire. It would just melt into nothing within seconds, right? But if you put a piece of metal in there, it would be sturdy. It would take time before it could get hot or heat up. It wouldn't melt, things like that. One thing that you're using just hits the fire and that's it perishes, and the other can take the heat, right? So that's the difference, is that the wicked can't take the heat. They're plastic in the fire. So, and God knows that. He's like, there's no way I can use this person for what I have intended. The second the heat hits them, they would just melt away. I need metal people that are made of metal, so that when that fire comes, that heat hits them, they can take it again and again and again. And no matter how much you heat it, that, they don't melt away. It doesn't burn off, right? That's, again, another analogy, weird analogy, but comparison to what a chosen one is. A chosen one is like that metal piece in the fire, where it can take that heat over and over again. And picture, both circumstances are human, so it's not really fair, I guess you'd say, for the metal to have to take all that heat when the plastic doesn't. But again, the plastic can't take the heat. It would just melt within seconds, right? So therefore, how can God use that piece of plastic for any purpose, knowing that it's just going to disintegrate as soon as the heat touches it? He has to have something that can withstand that heat, and the only thing that can is the metal. So therefore, he takes the metal and uses that for his purposes, because he knows the process is intense and there's a lot of heat, and that the plastic, quote unquote, weak, wicked humans can't take that. They can't handle that fire. So therefore, he has to take the stronger vessels to do it, okay? And you'd ask yourself, okay, so fair enough, I get that, but what's the point of that? Well, the point of that is because he wants to turn the plastic pieces into metal. He wants to try to create more and more warriors and soldiers for Christ. But somebody has to go first, right? Somebody has to learn and go through the hardship, the hardness first, before. It's just like, in the past, like say 200 years ago, we didn't have vaccines for certain things that we have vaccines for today. Unfortunately, people had to get those diseases and get very sick and die in order for researchers to determine vaccines so that they could save lives in the future. Somebody has to be the guinea pig. Somebody has to be the teacher, right? So it's the same idea, where God's using the chosen ones, which are his strongest soldiers, his warriors, those that have been tested in the fire countless times, that have never disintegrated or dissolved. to be the first ones, right? And then once we learn from them, they learn the hard lessons, unfortunately, then they're able to come and teach others so that others can learn how to become strong as well, and they can withstand the heat of the fire. But somebody has to go first. Somebody has to learn first to teach others, right? You have to be a student before a teacher. So that's basically what the chosen ones are, is that they're students that have been taught by the Lord and by the refiner's fire to become the teachers to teach students. The teachers that we have today that are teaching students, once upon a time, they themselves were students. They weren't born knowing the knowledge that they have. Somebody had to go first, learn the knowledge, then teach somebody at a young age, right? Then they grew up, they learned and retained the information, they taught someone, and so on and so forth. It's kind of the same idea where with the chosen ones, they were chosen by God, most likely at birth, to have to go through hardships, which put them in the refiner's fire countless times. They were originally made of metal, not plastic, and they withstood that heat time and time and time again in order for them to learn the resilience needed through the pressure to be able to teach others that are up and coming so that they know what's going on with them too. Somebody has to go first, hence the chosen ones. So it's not this big fancy title. It's not this thing of like superiority or something like that. There's more to it than that. It's, very complex. But what the Lord's been telling me is that one of the main characteristics of being a quote unquote chosen one is that at some point in time, most likely birth, God chose you from the very beginning to live the life you lived, learn what you've learned. He knew you were going to be metal through the whole entire process. That's why you may have been heated and hurt and bent and broke, but you never fully broke down. You never fully disintegrated because the metal cannot fully disintegrate in the fire, right? But the plastic beside you and your family, again, using it just as an analogy, the plastic people around you, that you've maybe had relationships with, you notice this difference between you and them, and that's because the metal pieces were rare. So picture 75% of the people around you are plastic, only 25% are metal, so therefore you are around others that are like you, but not very commonly. So those that are metal become kind of envious of the plastic, and maybe it's not envious isn't the best word, but they're just aware that there's a difference. Like I said, as soon as the plastic hits the fire, it disintegrates. When the metal does, it doesn't. So therefore the metal knows it's not plastic, and the plastic knows it's not metal. So oil and water, oil and vinegar, it doesn't mix, right? It's the same idea. You're not always going to mix, and they're not going to mix with you. And then they think that there's something wrong with you, and you think that there's something wrong with them. And unfortunately, because the metal pieces are in the minority, not the majority, it can easily look like the metal is the problem because 75% of everyone else is plastic. They're not metal. So that chosen one can go through life feeling separated and different than everyone else around them. That's because you are. But you can spend time, especially if you're going through these hardships, thinking that, there's something wrong with me, and having other people reinforce that to you. But the truth is that there's nothing wrong with you. You've actually been superior your whole life in a way that when these fires do hit you, you don't melt, you don't crumble, okay? And you see that about yourself, and others see that about you. But it's not just to have that lifestyle and then just that's it, and then you leave this earth and then life goes on. No, it's so that you can learn what you learn through those hardships. Everybody's path is different. Some people learn this at 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever age. But when you finally learn it, and then you can go and teach others, which is what the chosen ones are doing as I speak at this time. The chosen ones have went through the refiner's fire. They have realized they're metal, not plastic. They see the people around them as plastic. They've finally figured out the difference between the two, and they're trying to help others and teach others to learn what their life path is for, and learn these lessons that they've learned, right? So I'll touch more on this topic, but that's just one of the ways that a true chosen person is chosen. and the difference and what it means, because I know a lot of people are discovering that they're chosen. There's some that think they're chosen and they're really not. But those that are discovering that that's what they are, this is why. Like, this is what one of the explanations is.